Hello, everyone. This is Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and it is just Monday here in Phoenix. Monday by about 20 minutes, and that makes it a Mystery Monday. And I just finished reading the fourth of my books for March Mystery Madness, Ted Lewis's GBH. The prompt was read a mystery novel published in a year divisible by 5. This was published in 1980, and it's a British crime novel. And Ted Lewis is one of the writers who the British crime writer Derek Raymond describes as a writer of black novels, and by that he means like very dark, very unremitting, unrelenting, unflinching books, books that are willing to get down and look not at Tony crime, drawing rooms, jewel thieves, not at white collar crime, but at people who are almost subhuman in their criminal behavior. And this book was intense. I read it over about a 26-hour period this weekend. It it's very much still overwhelming me with everything that was going on in it. Um, I wanna read a passage to kind of give you an idea of what Ted Lewis is like. This is a haunting book, and so it alternates between two sort of narratives. One is called The Sea, the other is called The Smoke. This is an example from The Smoke. It's actually the very first one. This is like page 3 of the book. Sammy opened the door, which surprised me, even though he was expecting me. Sammy goes through life as if he's always expecting both barrels. That being so, I'd expected his old lady. And even when he'd clocked it was me, and not a different urban gorilla, his squiddy little eyes swiveled this way and that, trying to fathom the Hammersmith darkness beyond the relatively large shapes of Jean and myself. What he expected to be backing us up, I do not know. Sammy stepped back and held the door open, and Jean and I removed our shadows from the tatty Georgian columns, and entered the yellow light that did not do a lot for Sammy's undecorated hall, nor, when it came down to it, for Sammy's complexion. I got rid of Margaret and the kids, he said. The place is clear. That's right, Sammy, I said, as if it wouldn't have been. Sammy backed along the wall beyond the foot of the staircase, stopped his slithering against the first door on the left. I'm here, he said. Thanks, I said to him. Jean looked at me, signaling her opinion of Sammy with an icy smile, and walked through the doorway. I began to follow her, but my progress was arrested more by the expression in Sammy's eyes than by anything of a more physical nature. Mr. Fowler, said Sammy, I got to tell you, I don't like none of this. No way do I like none of it. I looked at him. I just wanted to tell you that, he said, wishing he wasn't having to endorse what he'd already said. Why, I asked, and maintained the look, and the longer I maintained it, the less inclined Sammy was to reply. Relenting, I said to him, you don't have to stay. You can piss off down the boozer. Tell Harry for you to use my slate. Or then again, you can clear up upstairs and watch the match on TV. Oh no, I wouldn't be able to turn the volume loud enough. And that gives you a taste. Like, Sammy doesn't get hurt in that passage. That we're in a first-person narrative with George Fowler, the main character, but he doesn't hurt Sammy in that passage. But we're very uncomfortable. We feel that Sammy's uncomfortable. Bad things are happening. And what's interesting is it's about a 300-page book. It takes 230 pages before there's any violence. George's specific aspect of like criminal activity involves adult films. It takes about 250 pages before we get any real sense of like what's involved. We know that bad things have happened. We know within the two alternating narratives, we've got The Sea and The Smoke. The Sea is set at this like out-of-season seaside town along the North Sea, I think in Lincolnshire, in a small town. The Smoke is set primarily in London at George's like penthouse, at his like some business dealings he has there. But the Smoke chapters kind of follow like maybe a 1 week period, about a week and a half period, and then The Sea follows a slightly longer amount of time, and it's set several months after The Smoke, but periodically it fills in what was going on or fills in what happened before that, how characters met. And many times the chapters are, I'm not kidding, 1 to 4 pages. A lot of those See in the Smoke chapters. And so we're just constantly like, there's a narrative that's moving forward, but we're also constantly like getting like little puzzle pieces filled in behind that. And it's really fascinating. It is quite dark. So Ted Lewis himself was a severe alcoholic. He wrote GBH right towards the end of his life, I think in the final like 5-6 years of his life. And so we see in the C chapters that all of the violence, everything that's gone on, this disintegration of George's like criminal empire, we see mirrored in sort of his own personal disintegration now as he's holed up alone in this bungalow in this out of season seaside town. And he's just, kind of sitting there isolated alone, and he goes to the tiny little bars there are where there's maybe 3 people in some of them, or there's a band playing that is just dreadful. And so it was a fascinating novel. It was an unflinching look at a person who's sort of bringing it. Think of Henry IV as a criminal from Shakespeare's plays. That's what it reminded me of, is that character of Henry IV, where he seems like he's made it to be the king, and yet everybody from Falstaff to Hal to Hotspur, everybody can see just what a loser he is. What, that everything's falling down around him. Like, and he seems to be like eating himself up from the inside with the evil he's done and the demons that are after him. So it was an absolutely brutal book. It haunted me. I'm still thinking about it. I think like after I finish this, I'm gonna go read the Bible or something to like mentally switch to a different place, because Ted Lewis just the writing was that powerful. This was a first time read for me. GBH stands for Grievous Bodily Harm, published by the Soho Crime imprint. I certainly enjoy those books. Some other books that it reminded me of course, Ted Lewis is very famous for his 1960s novel Jack's Return Home, which was then filmed as Get Carter with Michael Caine. This is the reprint of it. As I mentioned, Derek Raymond was highly influenced by Ted Lewis. One of his factory novels is He Died with His Eyes Open. A book that I would have considered one of the darkest crime books I ever read until I read GBH. More recently, David Peace wrote the Red Riding Quartet, set in northern England in like the 70s and 80s. This is 1977, and I think this was the one that most closely aligned to the sensibilities of GBH. In terms of like just the haunting nature of it, I was reminded of Guy de Maupassant's Le Horla. And then the book is incredibly elliptical. The ending astounded me. I've read a lot of crime novels. I can usually kind of spot what's going on. I can spot, the twists. There were twists within GBH that were very fulfilling. They made sense. They made narrative sense. They explained decisions people were making in the present tense and explained decisions they'd made in the past. And it really did feel of a piece. It made sense as a mystery, as a crime novel. And with that, I was reminded of just how masterfully tight and carefully woven and well thought the stories of Anton Chekhov are. And I felt that when I was reading GBH by Ted Lewis. And I think for me personally, that's one of the highest pieces of praise I can give a book, is when it makes narrative sense, when the twists and surprises, they weren't obvious, but there were pieces, there were references to something that was going to happen. And a close reading, going back and looking at it, a close reading makes it clear Ted Lewis knows exactly what he's doing. He's an architect, and there's no unnecessary rooms in the castle. So that was GBH by Ted Lewis. Next week, I'm hoping to get The Wrong Case by James Crumley in for a reread. GBH was a very dark book, though. So if you're feeling isolated or feeling that, with the social distancing going on, save this book for another time. Read it over the summer. Hopefully things will be better by then. But if you're feeling good and you want to explore something else, GBH by Ted Lewis. and I won't soon forget it. So thank you.